Well, thanks for speaking with us today about Afterlife. I watched season 2 yesterday, and I'd seen season 1 before. What struck me about season 2 is the theme of season 1 was very much about grief, and season 2 it's about when is it okay to move on? When is it okay to put grief behind you? It feels like.
That's exactly right. I think that it is a story of grief, and there was only a jump-off point for me initially. The seed of the idea was: imagine if you lost everything and you were going to kill yourself, but you didn't because the dog was hungry. You then think, well, I can always do that. I've always got that to fall back on. So now I'm going to punish the world and have one last hurrah. And then when it all gets too much, it's like a superpower. That was the idea. And we hit the ground running. He's going through the stages of grief. And in one, we hit the ground running with, shock, anger, denial. And now, and actually, the audience reaction to one played in to me writing certain things in 2, which is the great thing about social media, and I noticed that I've never had a reaction like it, for a start. And I don't just mean the size of the reaction, I mean the emotional strength of the reaction. People coming up to me, my agent got like 300 letters. No one writes a letter these days. And it was all their personal story. It was all like, I lost my brother 3 weeks before this. I lost my wife 2 years ago, and I was Tony. And I realised that everyone was grieving, and they identified with it. And I put 2 things into it from talking to people. One, I treated it respectfully. He didn't just snap out of it and get better because it was a feel-good rom-com. That doesn't happen. So he's trying, but he's not better. And 2, what people really liked, even in their grief and how I identified with them, was hope. And so within all the bleakness, there's hope. And I think that's really important for a lot of people.
In season 2, your on-screen father dies towards the end of the season, and obviously in real life, your own father passed away as well. Did you bring any personal experience you remember from those days to the show?
Well, I guess so. I mean, everything is semi-autobiographical because I think you should always write about what you know. I've thought that for forever. You write about what you know. Within that comes, conjecture and imagination and fiction. Obviously, it's not a biopic. But yeah, I lost my mum and my dad about 20 years ago. I lost my older brother last year. So obviously, when you get to 58, you've got things to grieve over. So yeah, certainly, I must say that I've never really suffered with depression like some, which is luck. And the grief that I imagine is for me the worst thing, which is losing your life partner. And there's even a line in it when his dad dies. He said, "It's not like losing Lisa, it's the natural order of things." He said that, in fact, I lost him a couple of years ago, if I'm honest, because he was suffering from dementia, and it got me used to the idea. And he said, "Still hurts, I miss him. In fact, I miss him more than ever because I got to know him better when he was ill. I used to see him once a month, and when he was ill, I saw him every day." So it's all those conflicts. There's guilt, and there's sorrow, and there's joy. There's a bit of joy, when, particularly if someone's suffering for a long time. There's a relief in families if they know if they're in peace and they're not in pain. All those things are going on all at once. So I try to make it messy and confused, and I've always liked the ambiguity of morality, because not all good people are good all the time. They make mistakes, and not all bad people are bad all the time. They do good things, and I hate it when the villain's got a moustache and he's just going around letting kids die, and then the good guy is diving in and saving puppies all the time. It's just so I like that there's a confusion, and Tony's not always doing the right thing. All he's trying to do is be happy, and he doesn't know how. He tried everything in season 1. He tried drugs. He tried violence. Didn't work. Now he's trying kindness, and that doesn't always work. So So that's what I'm trying to do, really. Make it messy and confused.
Tony also is someone who doesn't necessarily respond to things like group therapies and things like that. We see that in that, or there's that one conversation in the park bench where the scorpion and frog tale gets told, and he sort of realizes, here's how I have to grieve. Have you sort of found that? Are you skeptical of certain grieving processes?
No, I'm not at all. I'm in awe of whatever works. I'm quite analytical. I always look towards what's the actual answer, what's the truth, what's the science behind this, what does medicine say, and then there's a magical, untangible thing that is this consciousness that we have that isn't explained yet, and why we feel, and what are emotions, and what are hormones, and what are, what we as a at heart, I'm a sort of, I'm an evolutionary biologist. I want to know, what good is that? What good is that in our history? Why do we cry at films? What good is that? Well, it's all about empathy. Empathy was good for us as a tribe around the campfire, and the more empathy we had with each other, the more chance we had of surviving. It's as simple as that. And I like the fact there's always an explanation to something. We just might not have found it yet. No, I'm not cynical. I'm cynical against things that have no scientific or medical basis. I don't believe in, crystals, or praying, or I'm not superstitious. I'm not. But no, I look at the science, and I look at the results. That's what scientists do. Science is around because it works.
You mentioned people responding with crying and things, and I think people seeing you cry on camera sort of new for people who know you from The Office and things like that. How do you get yourself in those states? Do you have any particular performance things you fall back on to get to that emotional place?
No, it's just that I mean it. If the script is good enough, and that's something that would move me in real life, and everyone's done their job, and it's a good environment, and everyone around me is good, I can cry. I feel it. I mean it, and it's like anything else to me. I always do it in one take, though. That's the best take, because once you've cried, you feel better, and it's harder. It really does. It's harder to cry twice. So yeah, I sort of get there somehow. I've always been able to do that, and I know what you mean. That people sort of say, they constantly say that shows another side of me. Whatever I do, they still think, oh, I show another side of him. I don't have to do to let people know that I have empathy, and I like sort of pathos and all these things. But I think every time I do something like this, I then go and host the Golden Globes, and everyone thinks I'm cruel.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. They know you most from that sometimes. At least
yeah. I mean that's one of the the occupational hazards of being an actor and a comedian. Everyone thinks the last thing you did is the true window to your soul. No, he's just like that. That's what he's like. There's always a piece of you in stuff, but stand-up's an exaggerated version of me, and I quite often say things I don't really believe for the sake of the joke. Likewise in this, that people think that I'm like Tony. Well, actually, I'm like all of them. I created all the characters, and if you're gonna, it depends who you want to. It's not who's right or who you're most like. You have to make realistic conflicts. It's like playing chess with yourself. You have to try as hard as you can for both arguments. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not. They're not props for me to go through saying what I really believe in real life. That's just not true. It'd be boring. I might as well just say it. There's no conflict or drama or nuance. As I say, sometimes I agree with the things my character says, and sometimes I I don't. Whatever's the best drama.
The show's been renewed for a third season, and there'll be a third series. When do you sort of get a sense of when you'll feel safe to go back to make more? We're at a strange time right now, obviously.
Well, there's a lot of things I'm juggling with, because I was also on tour that was going to end in November, and then I was going to do this. But now the tour is going to at least February now because of the postman. So hopefully I can start filming next April, but which isn't much later than would have happened. But we're still not sure. And we don't know what effects this will have long term. It may change procedure and behaviour. I might have to go through and make sure every scene is me with one other person on a really long bench, wearing a mask for some reason. And also, as a writer, you have to. I try and reflect the world as it is to some degree, but obviously, I don't want to write a thing about the pandemic, because you could get that wrong. The worst thing people want, when it's all over and they're back to normal, they don't want to watch a thing about a pandemic 6 months late. So it's a very delicate tightrope walk. I think a mention might be fine if it's funny enough, unless it's still ongoing, and then all bets are off anyway. We don't know what we do. I remember reading that there was a lot of footage of the Second World War that was actually colour. They shot it in colour, but then they turned it into black and white after the war, so it felt like a bygone age. So maybe we'll do that metaphorically with COVID-19. It's like, it was ages ago. It was ages ago.
Right, it's history, but yeah, it's still important where we are now. Right.
Yeah,
it's an history. Well, have you also thought about how this will impact award shows like the Globes or the Emmys? Like, would you feel comfortable going to an award ceremony anytime soon?
Well, I never feel comfortable going to an award ceremony. It's the worst 3 hours of anyone's life. It's bad enough being in the audience, let alone hosting it. At least hosting it, I can have a beer. The Emmys are dry. Where I've been nominated for 24 Emmys, right? And because I'm a Brit, I look at it that I lost 22, not that I won 2. But if I'm up for one, I always make sure I hand one out as well, because then I know I can get backstage and have a beer. Because whereas the Golden Globes, of course, is better to be at, but the worst one to host because everyone's drinking, so it's terrible. I don't know. I mean, let's be honest. It's really, really a long way down the list for humanity award shows. It's like there's people dying who go, what about the Emmys? I don't know. I mean, in my heart of hearts, I think that everything will go back to normal. Even the trivial, mundane things that we didn't care about, people are missing. I didn't used to go shopping. I can't wait now to potter around the shops. I want to sit out and have a coffee. I never did that in my own neighbourhood, but now I want to. So and Afterlife is about that, really. It's about the mundane things, saving your life, the distractions, the normal things we have to do. And it's quite sweet. And I think the pandemic has made people think about the really important things in life. I, for one, and I know everyone I know, is calling their family more than they used to. So I hope it'll go back to normal, and this will be a blip like many other pandemics and traumas. The weird one about this is, just because of where it is in society with all the technology and news and social media, is that everyone is experiencing it at the same time in the world. That never happens. It's usually over there. Oh, I feel terrible for them, but now it's us, it's everyone. And I think that's the big difference
One of the things in your Golden Globe speech that you that sort of people really latched onto when you talked about how celebrities at award shows will make speeches, make political speeches, so use their time to do that.
I keep politics out of my comedy because I think if you're relying on an audience, they've gone there to be entertained. I'm just talking about comedy now, not in the real world. Obviously, I'm all for people having. I'm a fierce defender of free speech and saying what you want, and peaceful protest and all that. But I'm talking about within my work, within my comedy. I always think that if someone's paid money to come along and be entertained, they don't want me lecturing them. They don't need that. And also, even with political jokes, if they're so obviously one-sided, if you're relying on the audience agreeing with you and getting a round of applause, I think that loses something comedically. I want everyone to like and get my jokes because it's for everyone. And I'm sort of militant about that, and because you can't win, because I've seen it. People, when I do a joke that pleases one side, they claim me. They go and then when I do a joke that doesn't please them, they go So you can't have it both ways. They're jokes. These are jokes. You can't cherry pick. I think that I try and keep all my own biases out of jokes. And as I said, I'll often take a complete opposite stance to what I actually believe if it makes the joke better. I'll pretend to be right wing, left wing, no wing. It depends on the joke. So no, I wasn't really lecturing those celebrities to not say what they believe. Of course not. But I think I did. It was quite zeitgeisty around those because people were tired of being lectured by multi-millionaires telling them to recycle when they are flying around in private jets. So I think people were tired of their hypocrisy. It's not the freedom of speech or the meaning something or even having a political alliance. It's the hypocrisy that people got tired of.
One of the widely circulated memes from the Golden Globes was Tom Hanks reacting to your speech in real time. Have you two talked since then? Have you talked?
No, but again, I feel a bit bad for him because I think he had a cold and he did. I don't think he understood. I don't think he knew what was going on. I don't think he was anti what I was saying. I think he sort of thought, "Oh, this is a bit hot. Is this okay?" And I think people took that, meaning he was offended. I don't know if he was offended or not. I don't think he would be offended. But the flip side of it, when I teased Leonardo and he really laughed, people love that. They love, you know what I mean? They love a celebrity going, he got me. He got me. That's all you have to do. That's all you have to do is go, yeah, guilty. That's all you have to do.
Well, getting back to Afterlife, you mentioned that one of the you wrote season 2 inspired by some of the reaction you heard from people who'd experienced grief. What are some specific things that you worked into the season based on that reaction?
Well, as I say, I didn't have him just get better and snap out of it. It's like stop being depressed. I knew people loved the characters, so what I did was I made it more about the ensemble, so it wasn't just me going from one sketch to the next. It was worlds colliding, the postman and the sex worker, and which is a great thing. Once you've created the world and you've got all these things, you can mix them up, and people love that. It's role play, What else? I made the dog more important because he was always important, but I wanted the dog to metaphorically and literally save my life because I think that's true. So yeah, and I made I suppose more jeopardy that paper is somewhat from a bygone era, and it would struggle, and people aren't paid well, and but I've always been interested in the underbelly and the normal folk, I've always tried to make the ordinary extraordinary, and so just more of that. I love how comedy celebrates flawed behaviour and foibles and failure, whereas drama sort of washes over them. No one has big failures in drama. So comedy says we're all rubbish, and that's fine. We're all a bit shit, and that's fine. That's what I like. That's why I like about it, and add that into something quite dramatic, so it's realistic. And I think it's tantalizing.
It's interesting to me that it's been 15 years since Extras that debuted in 2005, and it's fun to watch you and Ashley Jensen still working together in this context. And season 2, we see you getting closer. It ends with the two of you seemingly starting a relationship. What has your collaboration been like behind the scenes over this time that you've worked together?
Well, that's the great thing about being around for a while. Getting final edit, like when I did The Office, it was sort of based on experiences I had in an office, and all the characters were based on people I knew, and naively I tried to find them in the actor's world, and that's hard. And then someone walks through and you go, no, they're perfect. This might not be what you thought, but you don't know anyone, and that's why the second series of something like that is better, because you know who you're writing for. Whereas because I've been around for so long, when I think of a character, I know who's the best person in the world to play that. I cast this before I started writing it. The first person I called, I think, was Kerry, and said, do you want to play my dead wife? She went, yeah, like, cheers, bye. Do you want to do... So I cast it before I wrote it, so I know they're on board, and I know what they can do, and they're all friends, obviously, and they're all great to work with, which I think is really important. I don't want to work with someone I hate just because they're brilliant. I'll work with the second best person in the world if they're a nice person. It matters. It really does. You've got to spend 8 hours a day with these people, so you better have fun. I want every minute of every day on set to be fun. I had horror stories of people, like, you know, I've heard stories of actors of doing the 7th season this summer, and they're hoping they crash on the way to work. Do you know what I mean? To get out, that's no way to live. You can't. So yeah, no, it's great working with them, and yeah, I have quite a huge ensemble now, and it's a joy. Yeah.
Do you have an idea of how that relationship is going to go in season 3? Do you already sort of know, is he going to be able to find happiness?
Well, I do, but it's the toughest bit. It's the toughest bit, the will they, won't they, because you can only do that a couple of times, and will they, won't they, if they will, it's sort of over. Do you know what I mean? So that's not a spoiler, because I haven't thought it out yet. You've got to find a clever way of giving people what they want realistically, but without killing it. It's really tough. It's really, really tough. You know, that's why a film ends with them walking into the sunset, because that's it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So and the answer is I don't know. I don't know what to do with that. I'll try. You know, I want to do something a little bit, you know, not obvious. And he is grieving, and he has got guilt. And it ends with her saying, okay, I'll take Groundhog Day, meaning, okay, let's do it your way. Let's not change it. Just be friends and see. So I don't know how it'll pick up yet. But that's the tricky bit.
Yeah, it's the classic Sam and Diane problem, or Moonlighting, or any of those, you know, many
examples. Yeah, of course, yeah. And I usually get away with it because I'm in and out in 12 episodes. This is the longest I've ever, 18 episodes. Not even one series of The American Office. Not even. I'm really milking it. This will be 7.5 hours of television. I really need to lie down.
Do you, looking back on Extras now, 15 years later, it's interesting to me how that show sort of is such a snapshot of its time, but also presaged the sort of obsession with celebrities in general. And it's sort of before the Instagram era. What is it like to see a celebrity behind the curtain? Do you think you were ahead of the curve that way, sort of capturing that?
Well, except that I never really thought it was about the celebrities. I thought it was more about the platonic friendship, and I always wanted to be Stan and Ollie, but one was a woman and one was a man, and it was platonic, and that was the meat of it for me. But of course, it was a great excuse to expose all the things that I love, that I've always done in humanity, which is, you know, human foibles, which is narcissism and vanity and ego and desperation, and, you know, and fame comes along, and even The Office sort of was an early study in fame, because it was a normal person getting his 15 minutes on a fake documentary, and I thought that was the peak of it. Then Extras, and you know, the end of the rant in the Big Brother house, and I thought, oh, this is the peak of it, and it isn't. And now it's off the charts. Now there's people doing selfies at Auschwitz, you know, and I'm still fascinated with narcissism, but and in Afterlife, I've got it down to someone who's, you know, he thinks he's got it worse than everyone else, and he meets people who are worse off than him, but he doesn't see that. People want to get in the paper. The psychiatrist is the biggest narcissist, because we accept it with actors and actresses. We accept it in Extras and at the Globes and all those things. Of course they're narcissists. But then I thought, well, what's the worst job in the world to be a narcissist? Someone who should be listening to someone else. A psychotherapist. Let's make him the narcissist. So I've always explored those things. But I didn't want to have overtly famous people playing themselves, because I feel that has been done so much. Not I didn't start it. You know, Larry Sanders. You know, Curb Enthusiasm, still going, still does it brilliantly. So I think, well, why should I do it as well? You know, it's covered. It's sort of covered. So I went back to ordinary lives.
Well, that narcissism you're talking about, it's almost even more than celebrity culture. It's social media. That's and we were talking about Twitter and things. And
everyone's famous.
Right, all the time. Yeah, exactly. So how do you? Is that something that you think will always be part of your work? That or do you see yourself doing a show about social media specifically ever? Is that something in your?
I don't. Although I do feature it. I featured it in Humanity quite a lot, because I thought, you know, I made that like a. It's an important thing. It's because it amplifies all the things. Fame just amplifies your personality until it defines you, depending on how early you got famous, how famous you were, what you're famous for. All these things, you know, play in on how you see yourself and how other people see you. It's strange, but it's not new in the sense that we all want to feel that we were here and we made a difference. Cavemen used to blow woad on their hand on the cave wall. I was here. And now it's, you know, there were more photos taken in 2014 than the rest of history. And it was people taking pictures of themselves.
On the other hand, you can see it, as we've seen now, the documenting abuses that happen in the streets with photos or with video is something that social media arguably has improved.
Well, I've used it in the sense that that's part of the play on words of Afterlife. You know, it's sort of three-way. One, obviously, he doesn't believe in the afterlife, so he hasn't even got that. He doesn't think Lisa's in heaven looking down on him. So, you know, and he says, I'd rather be nowhere with her than somewhere without her. It's really about, he thinks his life is over. He thinks this is after his life. He thinks he hasn't got a life. And the other side of the play on Afterlife is he's watching videos of her. You know, we're all on videos. I've got my sister as the keeper of the 5 photo albums, right? There's about 20 pictures of me growing up. There's 20 pictures of me today playing with a dog.
And you didn't even take a lot of those, or your family didn't. They're just out there being taken by other people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's just it. Well, CCTV.
Right.
Apparently, in London, you get photographed 200 times just walking to work and back.
What's the most valuable reaction you feel you've gotten, and one particular memorable reaction you've gotten from Afterlife, from someone who's seen it and reached out to you to express their?
Well, a couple of grief therapists have told me they use it in their treatment, which is so flattering. And they said that their subjects identified with it. And they told me, they said they were so glad that he didn't go through with it. So there's, you have that. You know what I mean? That those real issues do. I sound militant, and this is just, and I'm not going to do it, but you do feel a responsibility when you're dealing with such sensitive and delicate. You'd hate to think, oh, you've ruined the world. I'd hate that someone go, that comedy, yeah, it ruined the world, did it? Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Do you find that people, talking about your people's perceptions of you and things like that, do you find you have to, do you avoid trying to explain yourself when people mistake something you say, or
No, because I've done, if you do 10 different things, millions of people will see a different 3 or 4 of those things, and they have a different, even the people that saw the same thing will have a different perception of you, right? So you mustn't worry about it. You mustn't, I used to worry about reputation. And I realised that reputation is what strangers think of you. Character is who you really are. And you mustn't worry about things like that. People either like it or they don't. And you're not going to change anyone's mind, right? And although more than ever, right, with Afterlife, it was overwhelmingly beautiful and positive. Literally thousands of tweets every day saying, I love this show, right? But a percentage of them, maybe 5%, started with, I hate Ricky Gervais, but Afterlife is amazing. And I just thought, okay, it didn't start off too well, but it ended really well. So I'll take that.